Although cloaked in secrecy and operating with exceptional independence, the formation of the United Nations Planar Defense Council, the UNPDC, was not carried out in isolation. Behind its creation stood the tacit approval of the United Nations Secretary-General himself. From the very first discussions regarding the Codex, Christophe Dahlin had maintained discreet correspondence with Secretary-General Trygve Lie. Both men were Norwegians. Both had lived through the collapse of Europe into war. And now, both understood, though dimly at first, that humanity stood on the edge of something far stranger than politics or armies or the shifting borders of nations. In his briefings, Dahlin presented evidence few dared to imagine, recovered materials, testimonies of experts, events unaccountable to physics, objects unexplainable by archaeology, fragments of phenomena that bent the laws of science into shapes unrecognizable. To leave such anomalies unmonitored, Dahlin warned, was to invite a threat beyond borders, beyond nations, perhaps beyond humanity itself. At first, the Secretary-General was skeptical. His task was to stabilize a war-torn world, not chase shadows whispered in fragments. But as the evidence mounted, so did the realization. The implications were vast. Under Lie's direct authority, a decision was taken. Beneath the Palais des Nations in Geneva, the old seat of the League, lay an unused and undocumented facility. Abandoned corridors, silent chambers. There, stone by stone, it was transformed, without records, without trace. What emerged was the nerve center of a new order, conceived as the United Nations' most clandestine organ, the Planar Defense Council, a hidden seventh pillar of the UN, existing beyond oversight, beyond scrutiny, invisible to all but the Secretary-General himself. On February 29, 1948, the same day of its establishment at the stroke of midnight, the Council convened for the first time. 64 representatives, drawn quietly from across the world, sat in its chamber. In unison, they elected Christophe Dahlin as its inaugural president. At his side, as prime counselor, stood Salman bin Samir al-Faqih, a Saudi Arabian diplomat whose brilliance in deciphering the Codex had been matched only by his moral clarity. He would become the conscience of the Council, the voice of law and principle amid the shadows. From that night onward, the representatives labored without pause. Above them, nations rebuilt their cities, signed fragile treaties, and divided the world into East and West. But beneath Geneva, the Council worked in silence, drafting a charter not for peace among nations, but for defense against the unknown. Bases of operation were ordered in every member state, operatives recruited, resources drawn in secret. Mikhail Abakumov, a Soviet military strategist seasoned by the bitter campaigns of World War II, was appointed to forge the Council's first task force. Under his strict command, men and women were trained in clandestine operations, intelligence gathering, and lethal strategy, the first line of defense for the UNPDC in a world still reeling from global conflict. At the same time, Salman directed a team of philologists, linguists, historians, and archaeologists. Working by lamplight in the shadowed chambers beneath the Palais des Nations, they labored over the Codex, written in languages spanning centuries and continents. Scripts, symbols, and sigils were painstakingly transcribed and interpreted, yielding instructions, warnings, and the fragmentary guidance the Council would need to confront phenomena far beyond contemporary science. For the Council's material and logistical needs, Li Minghao, drawn from China's Ministry of Commerce, was appointed. He coordinated the acquisition of heavy equipment, vehicles, communications devices, and secure storage facilities. In the post-war years, every shipment of metal, motor, or electrical device required careful negotiation and covert transport. Every hidden base, every chamber stocked with rations, fuel, and field instruments was part of his meticulous network, ensuring the UNPDC could operate independently of any nation's oversight. Within a single year, The hidden organ nearly outgrew the body that had birthed it. The UNPDC spread across continents, its presence invisible but pervasive. Members multiplied in silence, bases hidden in cities and remote outposts alike, operatives moving like shadows, their reach extending farther than any nation could perceive. And yet, the world above remained unaware. To the public, the United Nations consisted of 6 organs, 6 visible pillars of diplomacy and governance, and even to the most meticulous record keepers, the 7th did not exist.